We had like something called a sky crane and entry guide, and just new more recent movies like The Martian kind of really does a good job representing what Mars actually looks like. It's more like, why not, right? We're all humans, we're all curious. It's all for like space and exploration and just hello everyone, my name is Gregorio Villar III, and I work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Yeah, so I've actually been working on 2 Mars rovers now. I started at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, back in 2010. So I worked on the Curiosity rover for 2 years, I believe. I helped land that, and then I also worked on operating it on Mars for 200 days. And then for the past 8 years, I've worked on the Perseverance rover. So I was part of what's called the entry, descent, and landing team. So there are people who build the rover, there are people who launch the rover into space, there are people who fly the rover to Mars. I am part of the team that is responsible for getting the rover from space to the ground safely in about 7 minutes. So I've been doing a lot of those things. You know, I can show you pictures of me helping test like the parachute that we have in the I led this test campaign where we brought our Mars parachute into the world's largest wind tunnel at another NASA center. We do a bunch of like simulation testing at JPL. There's just a lot of different things that we do in order to help land the rover on Mars. People always wonder, why are we wasting money on like space exploration? And it's more like, why not, right? We're all humans, we're all curious. It's all for like space and exploration and just fulfilling our interests. But also, you know, I feel like that's kind of our responsibility as humans, is to kind of explore the rest of the universe. And Mars is the next step, right? It's the nearest planet. And before we can go there, before people like me, I would love to go to Mars one day. Before I can go to Mars, we want to send these rovers there, robots, to be able to kind of understand the environment, test it out for us, learn about the place that we will eventually go to. You know, back in the day before we explored Mars, we knew nothing about it, right? So every time we send new missions, whether they're satellites or robots, we learn more and more. And over the past few decades, we found out that there was running water on Mars, right? And with the Curiosity rover, we found out that Mars was habitable for life in the past. So if there was life, it could survive on Mars. And now Perseverance, a lot of great things is happening. You know, Perseverance also carried a helicopter called Ingenuity, and we had our first helicopter flight on another planet, which was amazing. And eventually, Perseverance is going to collect these samples that we'll hopefully bring back to Earth one day. And so there's always cool things that's happening and always paving the way for the future for humans to eventually go to Mars. There's really 2 ways you can see this, right? Again, Perseverance is collecting samples. And so there's a whole other project that has started in the past year where eventually we will send another mission there, which will have a little rocket and a little, what's called a fetch rover. So this little tiny rover will go pick up the little samples from Perseverance and bring it back to the little rocket. And this rocket we will launch from Mars. We've never launched anything from Mars, and it will launch into Mars, and it will drop off like a basketball that's filled with these samples. And then it'll just float around Mars and wait for another mission to come pick up that ball and bring it back to Earth. So that's going to take, you know, a few, maybe 10 to 15 years, but hopefully also in that time frame, we can send people to Mars. And I know that NASA and the world in general is working on sending humans to Mars, and, you know, hopefully that'll happen in 10 or 20 years. Yeah, landing on Mars is very, very challenging, and especially in the earlier missions when you didn't know what Mars looked like at all. So as we progress through our landing capabilities, we wanted to start in very safe places first. So like the Mars exploration rovers, Spirit and Opportunity in the early 2000s, they just basically landed on like these really large flat places that was completely, you know, safer. And the more technology and capability we got with Curiosity, we had like something called a sky crane and entry guide, and just new capabilities, we were able to go to more challenging places. So for example, Curiosity went to Gale Crater. It's this huge crater with a mountain in the center. And so we wouldn't be able to do that without the new landing technology. And then Perseverance, even more so, it has this thing called terrain relative navigation, which you can look up. But now we went to this place called Jezero Crater, and there's just a lot of hazards that would not be safe to land to. But because we have new landing technologies that can help us land safely. Geology is a huge factor in landing safely, but also geology is why we're going there. We have geologists who love that science, because as you know, when you look at geology, that tells you the history of a planet. There's a mission back in late 90s, I believe, called the Mars Climate Orbiter. I don't know too much about it. I do know that I think they did say that it was caused due to like a unit conversion or something like that. I don't know. But like, as I mentioned earlier, you learn a lot from failures, right? And whatever that failure was, we made sure that that failure would never happen again by implementing rules or procedures so that all the future missions can make sure to double check those exact things. And so I wasn't around for that, but when I hear the stories from like my mentors and my elders, I can only imagine how much that sucked, right? I worked on 2 rovers, basically 10 years of my life, and if Perseverance didn't land safely, I would probably be crushed, right? Like, imagine working on something for 8 years of your life, that's it, and it doesn't work. It would be pretty soul crushing all the time. I mean, even the next mission, just even Perseverance and Curiosity, we're always collaborating with other countries. It's not just NASA. So, and you guys all know SpaceX, like we send missions through SpaceX all the time. So space is a collaborative effort, right? I don't like thinking of it as like NASA versus SpaceX or NASA versus the Russians or the Chinese. It's like, space is a human thing, right? It's like one human. It's what brings us together. And I always like to use the Pacquiao fights as an analogy. At least in America, whenever Pacquiao fights, I'm guessing in the Philippines too, right? Everyone just stops and watch Pacquiao, right? And I hope the same thing is true when things like Perseverance lands. I hope the world stopped. I think a lot of the world stopped to watch it. And even back in the 50s when Neil Armstrong first landed on the moon. So when we send humans in 5 or so years, I'm hoping that the world will just be united for that day or a few hours to just watch humans land on the moon again.